Hello cave dwellers, welcome to the cave. Remember this? Some longer term viewers will. It's the Checkmate A1500 Plus, a great success story for its inventor Stephen Jones, who wanted to create new computer cases that mimicked the Amiga 3000 style, but accommodated modern computers as well. And I've used them for a couple of projects. First of all, on the bottom here in the cream case was the A500++. We built a brand new Amiga 500 from scratch using that new PCB, and it's slotted in there beautifully with a Vampire add-on card. Great machine. And then on the top here was my Mr. Fusion, which is where I mounted a Mr, which is a very small device with the D10 Nano on top. It doesn't need a case like this at all. But as I explained in the project, I wanted to create that feeling of a retro computer, of all those machines that the Mr allows you to access, in a desktop case with a CRT monitor. And we had a bit of fun with it, with these buttons on the front and the joystick ports, and that all came together lovely, albeit with a lot of hot snot and some 3D printing to get the fit and finish that I wanted. Its creator, Stephen, has been really busy, and now we have the successor. Stephen did tell me that he was inspired by what I did in the Mr case, and some of the ideas went into the new case. I know he's a salesman, but I think I've had enough beers with him to think he's being genuine about that and not just trying to fluff me to say nice things. I'll give it an honest review, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we've got here. As a reminder, these cases were made to house the original Amiga 500, Amiga 600 and Amiga 1200 motherboards, as well as modern motherboards. The new one, well, it's slightly different. In fact, it's very forward-looking. We're not going to be accommodating old motherboards in this case. It's all about the FPGAs and the Pis and all of those new things, as well as regular PCs. Let's stop waffling, let's get the box open and see exactly what it is. And before we continue with today's episode, I must say a big thank you to PCBWay.com, our sponsor. Whether you need 1 or 1,000 PCBs, they've got you covered. Bare boards with components on, whatever you need. And it's not just PCBs that they do. They also do 3D printing now and CNC work. So your electronics project can get a professional finish. Get the case, get the PCB, everything, all from one shop. PCBWay.com, we thank them for sponsoring today's episode. And now let's get on with the show. So here it is. This new case is called the Checkmate A1500 Mini, and it will come with a glossy box. We're just lucky enough to have a super early hands-on look at it today, so the outer packaging isn't quite ready yet. But inside, if we take a look, it does look pretty bomb-proof. It's nicely packed up. There's a couple of manuals on the top there. And I know that Stephen took on Sam, a graphic designer, to help him make things look even more professional than he did first time round, and he's certainly done a good job of it. Oh, I seem to have an SD card inside mine for the Mystics. I don't have a Mystics, but I think that means I need to buy one. Everything you'd expect is in here, and just for comparison, here's the manual from the first case. It's certainly got a lot glossier, and it has a lot more information in version 2 of the manual, of course, because it's covering 2 cases. This is a manual for both the old and new, and it's a welcome upgrade. As an added bonus, my box also has an extra book, Mastering Amiga Amos. Amos being a basic programming language, and this book by Phil South is really aimed at those who've always promised themselves that they'd get around to writing something for the Amiga but not yet got to it. And well, there's no excuse now if you have this, a shiny new case and a book. What's stopping you? I think I'm washing my hair tonight, Phil, sorry. It's a nice touch to have this in the box though, and I'm sure many will dive headfirst into that to fulfill their Amiga programming dreams. Now let's dip into the case itself, and I'm pretty certain that this packaging will keep your case safe. Wherever it's shipping to in the world, it's very well packaged, although I know couriers will do their best to put that to the test. And you can see as I take it out that I've gone for the black coloured case, but it's also available in that Amiga clotted cream colour that we know and love. The choice is yours, of course, depending on what you intend to put in there. And as we take it out, first impressions, they're really very nice. Now I should point out that the 5¼ inch drive bay cover on mine, that's not the final one, it's an early test cover, so you might notice a variation in the colour between that cover and the case itself. That won't be there in the final release. I've just been too impatient to wait for the final thing, but you get the idea. And the case on the whole is very, very high quality, very similar to the original case in terms of the materials used and the high build quality. I actually think it's scaled down really nicely, and it does still maintain that original vision of Stephen to get the Amiga 3000 look. It's really nailed it, even in a black colour. The plastics on the front along the bottom of the case are unbroken. On the original, there's a pop-out section in the middle of that in which you could add USB ports or an SD card reader. Stephen's opted to have a clean, unbroken line on this case instead, and I have to say, I do quite like it. And the power button, which Stephen obsessed over with the first case, retains that clicky Amiga 3000 feel. In fact, let's get right in there and enjoy that click. And I should reassure you, if you enjoyed that as much as me, there's nothing wrong with you. It's everyone else who's weird. It's not us. You might also see me having a bit of a battle with my own fingerprints today, the side effect of a glossy black finish, and it's a losing battle, but I'm doing my best to keep on top of it. Around the back of the case is where things get really interesting. Gone are the back planes to accommodate original Amiga hardware, and instead we have a system of trays and port configurations to suit what you're putting in here. Be it a Mystics, an ITX PC, a Vampire, an un-Amiga ITX, there's lots of options that you can put in here. The particular configuration I have here is for my Vampire V4 Standalone, and we will be installing that today. Hence why I went for the black finish, I just thought that suited the Vampire theme the best. But more on that shortly, let's just compare the dimensions of the case with the original. Here is the original, so that gives you a sense of scale, and we've effectively lost a single 5¼ inch drive bay. Yes, it's called a mini. Compared to the original, it is mini, but in isolation, I'd call this a good-sized desktop case. We're not into Super Nintendo or PC Engine mini territory or those mini arcade cabinets that are on trend right now. It's not that small at all. It's still going to need you to clear all of that crap off of your desk to make room for it. Comparing now on an overhead shot, and you can see that you're still going to be able to get a decent sized monitor on this thing. And yes, it will take the weight of a big heavy CRT monitor. It's not going to bend, it's not going to buckle. It's probably stronger in fact than the original case, as the weight will be spread across a smaller top, but it's got just as much support on there. As I said, I want to put a Vampire in here, so let's take a look inside and see if we need the hot glue gun to bodge it in there, or if Stephen really has thought this through. There's just a couple of screws on the back to open it up. I guess if you really wanted to, you could replace them with some black thumb screws just to make it even easier. And then with those out, the case slides open. And on the original case, you may remember I was confused by the technique you needed to adopt to slide the lid off. You had to slide it nearly all the way off on the edge of a table, tilt it, and then unhook it. Well, that technique's gone. It's all been solved here. It's the much more orthodox method of just slide the lid off and you're in. And I'm not left scratching my head this time. Inside we find shelves for the PSU, which I'll need to add, space for drives, whether they be SSD drives, spinning hard drives, CD drives, floppy drives, all of the options are catered for. There's lots of adapters to fit in there exactly what you need to. And there's a power board present, which looks to be the same as the one we had in the original case. This board designed by Rob Cranley, who's been helping the project. And this takes your PSU input and spits it out for the device that you need. In my case, that's a 5V Mini B USB cable for the Vampire. And that board's also wired up to the power switch, of course, and also the power light on the front of the case. There's also a hard disk activity light, but that will need to be attached to your device in different ways depending on what your device is. You might have to solder it in, it might have a header that you can just slot it into. So that cable's just loose right now. On closer inspection, I did find that the power board is an upgrade from the original case in that the power LED can be attached to it. If we look at my original board, I've only got pins for the power switch and no LEDs. It's just a little change, but it means you don't have to figure out how to attach it to your device. The remainder of the case then is the optional tray, which I've got for the Vampire, with the required breakout cables. If we just flip over to the website briefly, you can see that there's a range of trays available for the Mystics, the un-Amiga, the Ami hybrid, that's a Raspberry Pi 4 based device, and a straight up Raspberry Pi 4, as well as the Vampire. And of course an ITX PC just drops into the case. I don't think you need a tray for that. And these are also being sold as complete kits, so you get the un-Amiga with it or the Mystics with it. You don't have to go hunting for parts, you just get everything as one package that drops into the case. And plenty of you will be perfectly happy with a Mister that plugs into your TV that you can't see, that you've hidden away in your lounge, and a wireless keyboard perhaps, and that's fine too. But many of you will want to recreate this desktop style experience, and it really does simplify things to be able to just get them all from one place like this. We've got our case, we've got our tray, here's a spare one, you can see what the tray looks like and you just screw it straight in and you're ready to go. And I'm more than ready because I've been sitting on this Vampire V4 standalone for a couple of months now, desperate to spend time with it, but also wanting to save it for this case so I can enjoy it in a nice setup. And that's what we're going to do right now. The Vampire is an FPGA based device designed to give you a super fast Amiga computer experience, and it comes with its own metal housing, which I understand the Vampire team aren't particularly happy about you removing. And so to ensure that these cases weren't going to start voiding warranties on people's Vampires, the fitting method is very simple and it retains that casing. To fit it, we just remove 4 screws from the rear of the case, or is that the front? I'm not quite sure which is the front and which is the back. But we take these 4 screws, we slide the Vampire into position in the Checkmate case, and then we use those original screws to secure it back into place. Now surely I haven't voided my warranty doing that. It's the original screws, they're going into the case, we've just got a bit of metal between them. With it screwed into place, we then plug in all of the breakout cables into the Vampire to bring all of those ports around to the back, make them nice and accessible. And yes, still no hot snot has been used. And it makes my Mister series seem like a monumental effort compared to this. What was that, 3 episodes along that series to get that Mister into the case and test it out? It's 30 seconds and 4 screws here. Why didn't you come up with this 2 years ago, Stephen? Next up we need power, and I want to use that power board to have my power light come on in the case. But it does still feel like massive overkill. I'm fitting an SFX power supply into the case to drive a 5-volt device. It's a bit crazy, and there's no reason why you couldn't run a USB cable into the case to power the Vampire, but I want to show you it all kitted out. Now this is an SFX PSU that I had to hand, but Stephen is also offering PSUs of his own as an optional extra, which he expects to sell for £39 plus tax and delivery. And that's great because they go for about £60 to £70 normally here. And Stephen's also added a temperature sensor so that the fan will only kick in when it gets too hot on his. And crucially, they won't switch off if a low amount of power is being drawn from it. He's found that some of the SFX PSUs would just shut down if you're only using something like a Pi on it. It doesn't recognize that a machine is in use, the power draw is so low, so it just switches off. Although thankfully, the one that I've got here does seem to be fine. And while it is overkill, I guess if I ever swap the Vampire out for something else, it's nice to know I've got all options covered by having this in here. The power supply's in and hooked up. The case can go back on with a nice clunk. And we have one more decision to make before we test this all out. The keyboard. We don't want to create a lovely looking machine only to have the keyboard let it down. And at first, I was just going to go with a black basic keyboard. Nothing wrong with that, you might think. But I just felt that the slimmer case might be better served by something different. And as it's a Vampire, something a bit more Amiga-y. Enter Amiga Keycap kits. Yes, Stephen really has thought of everything, and what we have here is a choice of 3 styles of keycap kit to suit your needs. They're suitable for any Cherry MX keyboard or clones of the Cherry MX, and of course I'm going to go with the black set. I might even get a second set of these to go with my CDTV because I don't have a CDTV keyboard, so I could adapt it for a USB keyboard and have a nice black Amiga keyboard for it. Complete with those Amiga A keys either side of the spacebar. None of that Windows nastiness here. There is one thing to be aware of with these though, they've been produced for the ANSI keyboard layout, not ISO. ANSI being more popular in the States, I think in the Netherlands and a few other countries, with others the UK and most European countries using ISO layouts. What does that mean? Well, the most obvious difference is that the return key is split into 2. So we'll need a donor keyboard with the same layout. My requirements then were something not too wide, an ANSI layout, and something that wasn't going to break the bank. Stephen will be selling these keycap kits with his own keyboards, but they aren't ready just yet. He's expecting them to be in stock, well, about the time this video goes out publicly, so now probably. But I resorted to Amazon when I was making this video and found myself a gaming keyboard that wasn't listed as ANSI, but it looked right from the pictures. It has cloned Cherry MX keys, and it's coming in at just £30. So I gave it a punt, and when it arrived, I was surprised that it felt pretty good to type on. Want to hear it? Go on then. It's everyone else who's weird. But the big question, was the gamble worth it? Does the cap fit? I think it's time for a key swapping montage. It's a perfect fit. I'm really pleased with this. The only thing I think that cheapens it for me is the manufacturer's logo in silver. There's not a lot I can do about that, but considering ANSI Cherry keyboards are, well, they're listed over here for over £100, I think it's a fairly sane compromise. And now I think we're ready to plug it all in, see how it looks, and see the Vampire up and running in the Checkmate case. Well, here it is all set up. I'm 99% happy with this, and the bits that aren't working aren't really the fault of the case. It's more to do with the Vampire, and that's because I'm just not familiar enough with it. And this is not a review of the Vampire, by the way, so don't be disappointed if we don't spend another 40 minutes looking at that. It's all about the case. And if you just take it in, I think the combination of the keyboard with the Amiga keys there and the case and just the proportions and the size of the case are really nice. Now, ideally, I wanted a smaller monitor on here. There's a couple back here, which I'll show you. I've got a CRT, Gateway CRT monitor. You've seen that before. I bought a second one. I liked it so much. And this BenQ monitor, which is just a nice size. It actually supports 15 kilohertz, so it's a great monitor for a lot of devices. When I try these monitors on the Vampire, I'm finding that I often get half a screen. When it dips out of the RTG, so the improved graphics modes that the Vampire offers, to those original modes, it kind of goes to half the screen. And reading up, it favors a widescreen monitor, and there is a way of creating custom resolutions on the Vampire, but I need to dive into it. I need to figure out if I can make it work, which is why we've got a monitor on here, which kind of goes against everything else I've done. Small keyboard, small case, and then a wide monitor on top. I really want something a bit slimmer on there. Another problem I found is that there's no 3.5mm audio output. The Vampire team have followed the lead of Apple and done away with 3.5mm audio because it sends all of the audio through the HDMI. This is not an HDMI monitor, it's a DVI monitor. So I'm probably going to have to get a smaller HDMI monitor with audio that I can plug my headphones into and enjoy it that way. Again, not a criticism of the case, it's just my unfamiliarity with the Vampire. Back on the case though, I like the final look. I think it looks great on this table here. It's going to look great in the exhibition with the future retro, the modern retro devices like the Mister, the A500++, all of those things. It's going to look great as a lineup for people to come and try. The drive light isn't working. Again, I don't know where to plug it into the Vampire just yet. We'll have to do a whole other episode on the Vampire V4 standalone at some point, and we'll figure out where to plug that in. And power is an interesting one. It works, obviously it works fine, the light comes on. But what I'm finding is if the Vampire locks up, and I don't know if this will be the same on other devices, if I power it off and then I power it on again, it doesn't actually reset the device. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't. Let me show you something. If I pull out the power cable and press the power button now, you can see that there's residual power, the light comes on, so the Vampire is still getting power even when I've turned it off using the off switch, which means it's not getting a full reboot. I'm not getting that cold reboot I need to get it working again. Not a problem, I just pulled the cable out. So it'll be interesting to see if when Stephen Jones releases his own PSUs, if they allow that residual power to dissipate and the device actually fully powers off without having to pull the cable out the back. Minor issues which may or may not be specific to my circumstances. I'll be interested to hear how people get on when they get hold of this case themselves. And on the keyboard front, it's supposed to light up. I don't think it's getting the power from the Vampire to actually light up all the LEDs, and it would have been quite nice to have the option to have a little red glow coming from under the keys to match the Vampire-ness of it, the black and the red, and complete the look. I'll have to figure that out. Maybe I need a powered USB hub or something like that to give it the juice it needs. Again, just specific to what I've put in the system. Here are a few more shots of the case now because, as I said, it's all about the case. It's not really about what I've put in there, and hopefully you've got a feel for the options, what you can do with this case, whether it suits you or not. And if the original Checkmate case, that larger case, wasn't for you, maybe this one suits you better. Maybe you've hopped on board the FPGA train or you want to get on board, and this might be the way for you to do it. As always, thank you for watching. Do check out all of the links in the video description below to find out more. I don't know if you can hear that bird tweeting up there, but it seems very happy with what it can see down here. Take care everyone, and see you next time. Bye-bye.